Next up in our series of Monster Pod videos, or on the actual Monster Pod, if you're listening instead of watching, we've got a discussion of the Breeders' Cup Mile and bringing in a man who follows international racing closely and domestic racing closely. And I always want to talk to him ahead of the big races. You see him on TVG. You've been watching him on the Keeneland simulcast feed. He's Scott Hazelton. Scott, how are things?
Things are good. Getting down to it. Final days of this Keeneland fall meets, and then obviously pivoting towards the invaders that'll be coming here and getting ready for the Breeders' Cup and getting ready for those morning shows. Those are early mornings, but good fun and a good way to get ready for the big day. Watching these horses train and just getting a feel for how they've adapted to the cooler temperatures that we'll be dealing with, no doubt, in those early mornings here in Lexington.
It's great stuff watching that morning show coverage, and you can find terrific info year in, year out. Suggest that you make sure to check that out. What's the best way for people to follow along with that stuff? I know it's available in more than one place.
Yeah, well, Fanduel TV is where it will air in those mornings from 7 a.m. To 10 a.m. Eastern time. But if you're not up and available to watch those, they're going to be posted on the Fanduel TV YouTube channel. And honestly, I think the best way would be the Fanduel Plus app, which was formerly Watch TVG. So you can download that on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. They'll be on demand there. So you can punch it up on your big 75-inch screen and recap what we see in the mornings with those workouts and the reactions from the connections that we come across. So I think with the Fanduel Plus app would be the best way in order to access it. But the YouTube channel is another avenue as well.
What a host fail, as I mentioned TVG in the intro and not Fanduel TV. I'll get used to it eventually. It'll happen. Let's talk about this Breeders' Cup Mile. Now, this is a race where there was a point, maybe a few days after the Woodbine Mile, where if you asked me about the market in this race, I would have said, oh, Modern Games, 4-5 shot. That was before a couple of key pieces of information were learned. One was that Modern Games was going to, in what was to me somewhat of a surprise, run again in the QE2 at Champions Day at Ascot. And the other was that a multiple grade one, group one, I should say, winner in Kinross was going to be coming over here. Now we're seeing prices like 2-1, 5-2, 3-1. Let's talk about Modern Games for starters. How impressed are you with this horse? And how legit of a favorite do you think he is, or is he even the favorite at this point?
I mean, I think it remains to be seen. It's a wide open race. I mean, with you mentioning Kinross coming in off of his run at Longchamp at the beginning of the month, he's got to be respected. I just wonder with the Modern Games going to the QE2 if it had a lot to do with Appleby in the trainers run, and that was something that was brought up to me that I think that we lose track of in covering these races or watching these races, because it's just not part of the focus here in the U.S. It's just not the same sort of mentality set up as far as declaring a champion trainer at the end of the season. We obviously vote on it when it comes to the Eclipse Awards, and there it's dictated by what the bankroll at the end of the season. So that might have had something to do with it. And I don't think Charlie Appleby would come over here with this colt if he wasn't doing okay off of that run. Which, I mean, Baid got beat the same day. So I still think Modern Games coming around a bend is going to be a big plus for him. And the way that he ran here last year at the age of 2, the way he won that Woodbine Mile, which was arguably the most impressive grade 1 mile race in North America, I still think you've got to give him a lot of respect. I don't have a feel for Kinross. I'll be completely and utterly honest with you. I know he's won his last 3 starts. He won a Group 1 in that most recent one over soft ground, but what kind of ground is he going to encounter come the beginning of November here at Keeneland? Because it's been dry. We have barely gotten any rain over the last month or so. So it might not be the conditions that Kinross wants come the beginning, that first weekend of November here in Lexington.
It's a fair point. And, distance also a question. Typically, the sprinters from there and horses that will translate 6 furlong form to a mile in the USA. So I'm not too worried about it. He's a horse we're going to be covering a lot more. We'll get a chance to clap eyes on him during the week. We're going to have a ton of coverage of Euros in general. As for Modern Games, to just go back to him for a minute, for me, the difference at the end of the day, I do think the ground will move him up. I think the bend will move him up. I'm not too worried about having the race in between, but just knowing that was a bit of an audible, and I think your suspicion is probably right that the trainer's title over there had something to do with it. Instead of the 4-5 or even money I was thinking it was, I'd probably want 6-5 or 7-5. So for me, in my like head canon, still a big favorite, but I do think you have to make some adjustments for that slight change in plan. But with the success that Applebee's had over here, I think you'd be a little bit nuts to completely stand in his way, at least from a horizontal betting perspective. Let's talk about the domestic contingent for a minute. Not that there aren't other interesting shippers and Euros who are going to be showing up. And maybe we'll, if I can steal you for a few minutes next week when we have PPs in hand, Scott, maybe we'll revisit this topic on one of the daily Breeders' Cup pods I plan on doing. But let's talk about the domestic contingent for a moment. Who do you think is the most interesting from our side of the pond?
I hate to go with, I mean, you react to what's happened lately, right? And I think that Annapolis has punched himself as a serious miler, especially when you're a 3-year-old that just beat a group of seasoned older horses as he did in the Coolmore Mile here at Keeneland. That was a very good performance. And, you know, we've talked about how Todd Pletcher, what kind of fall he's had here in Kentucky. This horse spending time here, I think, is a big plus, but that was a really top-notch performance in which he was able to put that together, the 3-year-old colt for Ramona Bass and Bass Racing. So I think that he has elevated himself above a group of horses that we've seen a lot of. I mean, these are horses, and it's great. It's great that we're seeing these horses stay in training. Casa Creed at the age of 6, still getting after it. You know, he ran a solid 5th, only beating 2 lengths in the Coolmore Mile. Ivar always tends to show up, it seems, for Paulo Lobo. And then Smooth Like Straight, I still have yet to find a reason, and honestly just have not had the time to dig into it, why they opted to skip the Coolmore Turf Mile here at Keeneland. But, you know, he's a consistent contender that always sets the pace. He hasn't won in a while, but, you know, you've got to respect him, especially if the ground is quick here in Lexington, which I think we'll probably end up seeing. Haven't seen an advanced forecast this far out, but like we said, it's been very dry here. But, you know, of the U.S. domestic type horses, I would say that Annapolis, with that performance, has separated himself in this mile division with the domestic runners.
Improving 3-year-old late in the season, big run over the course, and a trainer that could not be hotter. These are all reasons why I think it would be a mistake to dismiss Annapolis's chances out of hand. Any other European contenders you're hearing about who you might be interested in? It sounds like Bayside Boy, who beat Modern Games, is going to be making the trip over. Anything there that you might want to pause on for a second? And again, we'll return to, I like this idea of returning to this topic when we have the actual PPs and know more about the exact composition of the field. But just want to give you a chance. I know you follow European racing pretty closely.
Yeah, I mean, you got to respect him if they come over with Bayside Boy. And then, I mean, Order of Australia, you know, he's been the definition of inconsistent over the course of his career. He obviously sprung that massive upset a couple of years back in the Breeders' Cup Mile with that aggressive ride from the outside post, drawing in off the also eligible. And, you know, he came back with a good run in the Coolmore Mile as well just the other day. Not showing much speed, but actually showing some finish with Sumian in the saddle. And we'll see what direction they go with as far as the rider. I would assume Ryan Moore will be back with him if in fact he's coming this way. But, you know, I think that the European runners, it's Modern Games, it's Kinross that you have to really focus your attention on. And like you said, we'll see how they who they decide to send this way. And then I think a big thing for me in the opportunities that we have is just getting an opportunity to watch these horses, to look at them and the way that they are training and the way that they look and the way they've shipped once they get out here to Kentucky.
A lot more information coming. You can watch along on FanDuel. You should be following Scott on Twitter as well, at ScottFDTV is the handle there. We're going to try to have him back on, and we're going to have loads of coverage, of course, over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com, and then even more via In the Money Plus, InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus, if you want to learn more about that. Scott, thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing you in person and chatting again soon.
All right, travel safe. Looking forward for everybody to get in town so we can get after it.